Henry Novak was an 18-year-old white boy from Essex, living in Southampton. In December of this past year, while walking home at night on December 3rd, he was brutally stabbed and murdered by a 22-year-old Sikh man, Vikram Digwa. The latter has been convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Vikram's defense in court was that Henry was drunk, that Henry bumped into him on purpose, that Henry began using racial slurs, that Henry had insulted his religion, and that Henry became violent and he, Vikram, feared for his life. Some of the events were captured on the two individuals' cell phones, the officer's body cam once they arrived on scene, and neighbors' security cameras, but many of the details will only ever be known by Vikram and Henry. When the two men crossed paths sometime around 11:07 p.m., Henry was on his way home from a pub where he did in fact have a few drinks with friends, but his blood alcohol level during his autopsy was found to be under the legal limit to drive. Even the judge during Vikram's sentencing stated the following, quote, "You claimed he deliberately barged into you. I am sure that was one of the many lies you have told and repeated since it happened," unquote. Whatever actually occurred, the moments following their initial encounter were captured by Henry's cell phone and were shown in court. Vikram is seen walking away when Henry says, quote, "Isn't it bad, man? What a bad man. You're a bad man. Say you're a bad man. Go on," unquote. For reference, bad man is local slang for gangster. Vikram then turns around and makes his way back toward Henry and replies, "I am a bad man." Henry then repeats the question, "Are you a bad man?" when the footage abruptly ends as Vikram grabs Henry's phone. Vikram stated in court that he took Henry's phone in response to Henry recording him. The judge, however, stated that Henry's voice was, quote, "not aggressive or threatening, but, as it turned out, a tragic error of judgment," unquote. And referring to the large 21-centimeter blade Vikram carried on his person, quote, "It is a reasonable conclusion that the comment was because he had seen the large sheathed dagger," unquote. The judge continues, quote, "You were not frightened or concerned and grabbed his phone, removing it from him. The exact events which immediately followed were only witnessed by Henry and you. However, it would not be unreasonable to conclude that Henry would have wanted his phone back, believing it had been stolen from him or that he had been robbed. That may have led to a physical struggle between you and him. In that situation, there was every need for self-restraint and control on your part. As someone who was born and raised in the UK, that should have been your focus rather than any distorted view of your religious traditions. Strong words, even a verbal threat, might have been justified, but no more," unquote. Vikram then claimed that after taking Henry's phone, Henry punched him in the face and pulled off his turban. Quote, "I went to block the phone. I've grabbed it as well. This is when he punched me. He then pulled my turban. He pulled it off my head. As I'm bent over, he started saying, 'I'm going to f*** you up. I'm going to kill you,' unquote." Vikram also asserted that he was afraid that Henry was going to grab his Kirpan and use it against him. He told the court that he did not mean to stab Henry in the chest when he pushed him away and cried when he heard of his death. He told the court, quote, "I'm sorry that it happened," unquote. The judge, in sentencing, however, stated, quote, "I am sure that you intended to kill in the moments before you stabbed Henry," unquote. And indeed, it was at this point most likely that Vikram inflicted 3 wounds to Henry, a slash to his jaw, a stab to his lower body, and a stab to his chest, which punctured Henry's lung, severed a major vein, and immediately began causing massive internal bleeding. This, ultimately, would kill Henry, although it would take about an hour for him to die. Bizarrely, it was Vikram who began recording after this. The footage in court shows Henry escaping over a fence. Early on in my research, I thought I had read that Vikram stabbed Henry twice more in the back of the legs as Henry climbed the fence to attempt to escape. Now, Henry did receive 2 additional stab wounds, one to the back of his upper thigh and one to his buttocks, but these may have been sustained before Vikram began recording. According to the Daily Echo, which covered the first 2 days of the trial, the pathologist stated that these wounds showed an irregularity that indicated movement of the knife or the victim. Whatever the case, Henry likely received these wounds while fleeing Vikram. But in reference to Vikram's recording here, the prosecutor said during trial that Vikram's own footage at this point shows him with his hair in a tight bun, and that when police arrived, his hair is down. Mr. Lautenberg said, quote, "Why has he put his hair down for the arrival of the police? What does that tell you about what he is telling them?" Unquote. The suggestion here is that of deception on Vikram's part. insofar that he made his hair appear more disheveled for dramatic effect, so as to make his story of being attacked more credible to the police. Once Henry made his way over the other side of the fence, it seems that he lost the ability to continue to flee, and he then begins pleading for help as Vikram took close-up photos of him and further taunted him for an additional 5 to 10 minutes. GB News reported that transcripts from the night were read out by the prosecution, in which Mr. Novak is heard saying, "I am dying," and Digwa replies, "You're not dying, bro." About 10 minutes later, Mr. Novak told Digwa, "You stabbed me," to which he replied, "No, I didn't," and "You were recording me, thinking you're sick." For reference, sick here means something akin to tough. But in fact, Vikram knew that he had stabbed Henry and was lying to him. As GB News also reports, Vikram himself admitted in court to being dishonest with the police. Quote, "I did not mention the full truth and that I had stabbed him," unquote. The judge at sentencing also relayed a secretly recorded conversation between Vikram and his brother that took place in a police van 2 days after the murder. Quote, "Speaking in Punjabi, you agreed to pretend you had acted in self-defense, even though you confessed to stabbing Henry 3 times, including once to the chest with the dagger. You knew you were guilty, demonstrated by your saying to Gurpreet that if there were any cameras in that part of Belmont Road, you would be unable to put forward self-defense. You decided, as much as you had at the scene, to try to cover it up. In all your police interviews, you decided not to answer questions about the incident. Instead, you made a written statement on the 7th of December, which told more lies," unquote. Now, regarding the footage that Vikram had taken of Henry, the Southampton Times reported that it was, quote, "too disturbing to be shown in court," and that it showed him, quote, "laughing at Henry Novak as he died." Instead, the jury was shown still images and a transcript of the footage. After about 10 or so minutes of taunting and recording Henry, rather than call an ambulance, Vikram called his family. Cell phone footage was shown in court revealing that he asked his mother to take the murder weapon back to their home, where it was later recovered by the police. GB News reported that transcripts included translations of a Punjabi conversation in which Digwa could be heard saying, "Mum, Mum," and "take it away." His mother's defense said she was distressed, uninformed, and placed the kirpan among religious objects at home. Ultimately, her actions were seen as suspicious enough to arrest her and investigate further, and subsequently, she has been convicted of assisting an offender and awaits sentencing in July. In the police evidence photos, the dagger still has blood on it, which could suggest that Vikram's mother saw the blood at the time he told her to hide the weapon. Although, it's possible, even probable perhaps, that Vikram had placed the knife in its sheath beforehand. Even so, while I'm not privy to the exact nature of this exchange, Henry must have been repeating over and over again that he had been stabbed. Even if she didn't see any blood, and Vikram didn't say explicitly, "Mom, I've just stabbed this boy, please take this weapon and hide it," a reasonable person might have suspected something was amiss. Even the neighbors had apparently heard Henry crying out that he had been stabbed, and during all this commotion, they called 999 to report the incident. Yet somehow, nothing came of this call. The police only arrived on scene after Vikram's brother Gurpreet called and reported that Henry had racially attacked them.
Sorry, we just got attacked racially by some white person.
Right, okay. Whereabouts are you?
We're on Belmont Road.
Just out in the street, are you?
Sorry?
You just in the street?
Yeah, literally, I just parked up my car to come home and he's attacked my brother.
You talking about verbally or physically?
No, he physically attacked my brother. We're Sikhs, we wear turban, and he's just attacked my brother.
Note that Gurpreet claims that he too was a victim of Henry's racial attack. Now, as far as I am aware, any interaction Henry had with Gurpreet would have been after Henry fell over the fence and had become immobilized by the stab wounds he sustained from Gurpreet's brother Vikram. And again, all throughout this time, Henry is likely continually pleading for emergency aid, which he will never receive. When the police do show up, Henry is found lying on the ground between a vehicle and the wall of a house. Vikram's father, Moga, is attempting to prop Henry up against the wall because his condition is deteriorating, and Moga informs the police that Henry has a, quote, mouthful of blood.
He keeps dropping side to side, so I'm just trying to keep him set up. He's got a mouthful of blood, I don't want him.
I can't breathe. He was on the bin.
Note that Henry is heard saying that he can't breathe. Again, I will assert that Henry was likely begging for help all throughout this entire ordeal, and that Digwas continually ignored his pleas. The officer then approaches Henry and asks him for his name. Henry, barely conscious, doesn't give an audible response. The officer then asks if anyone else has been hurt. Vikram then claims that Henry had grabbed his turban and hit him in the face.
Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother, he's took my turban off, so I grabbed on my head.
Are you injured?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, little bruises.
Alright, just step back a little bit for me.
But what's a little more curious here is that Vikram now even states that, quote, he's grabbed my brother.
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother, he's took my...
Again, potentially, the two brothers are making it appear as if both of them were attacked. Vikram then attempts to highlight a swollen and bruised eye to the officer. The judge later stated to Vikram at sentencing regarding his alleged injury that, quote, it is not obvious on body-worn footage taken then, and there has been no independent evidence given in the trial of any injury at all to you, unquote. The officer then tells everyone to step back as he drags Henry out from behind the car. At this point, Henry can be heard telling them over and over and over again that he's been stabbed.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we?
I was in bed asleep. Whenever we just find me up there, look, someone's attacked me.
Grab his other arm.
Help. So I've just come running, we only live on St. Denny's Road. I've come running around the corner.
What's happened to you, alright? You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate.
But despite the fact that the police have been told that Henry has blood in his mouth, despite the fact that said blood is audibly gurgling Henry's labored speech, the police don't believe him. The officer even states, quote, no, I don't think you have, mate. They then proceed to handcuff Henry and read him his rights as he pleads, with the last bit of life he had left, that he couldn't breathe. In the background, you can actually hear Henry's killer claim that his family is a constant victim of racial attacks.
This is like the times this has happened to us. You've been walking, you can't
Can we get a van?
nothing happened.
A female officer then coldly voices, we have to check, don't we? Referring to Henry's claim that he had been stabbed. Henry then loses consciousness for the final time. His face is censored, but the last thing heard on the footage is an officer stating that his pupils aren't responding to stimuli, a clear indication of the severity of the situation. Supposedly at this point, the officers began emergency first aid, and a doctor was flown in by helicopter. It's hard to pin down exactly how much time took place between Henry getting stabbed and him receiving aid, but had the Digwas been honest, had Vikram phoned an ambulance instead of taunting and laughing at Henry, it certainly would have been much sooner. A reasonable estimation of the timeline is that Vikram stabbed Henry at around 11:17 p.m. Then at 11:30 p.m., Gurpreet called 999. The police arrived 7 minutes later and did not begin administering first aid for at least an additional 3 minutes. We don't know how long it took for the emergency doctor to arrive by helicopter, but in any event, after Henry is handcuffed and loses consciousness, he never regained it, and he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene at 12:37 a.m. As Millennial Woes highlighted in his poignant essay on the events, quote, Henry Novak's final hour was spent listening to alien people conspiring against him in a foreign language, while using English to accuse him of racism and deceit. His final minutes were spent with British police dismissing his pleas for help. His final waking moments were spent in handcuffs on a cold December ground, while all of the above continued around him, unquote. The pathologist who performed Henry's autopsy stated that no emergency medical treatment would have permitted access to the bleeding vein, and that Henry would not have survived however quickly he received first aid, CPR, or expert medical treatment. Personally, though, I don't see this as a mitigating factor in the travesty of these events. Even if Henry was in fact doomed, at least his final conscious moments could have been spent being consoled by sympathetic voices and familiar faces. But as of now, the coroner is calling for a more thorough investigation into Henry's death, stating, quote, I am not satisfied that the investigations that have taken place to date in relation to the death of Henry Novak have fully discharged the investigative Article 2 obligation. Indeed, those other investigations were not and are not necessarily intended to discharge such obligations. The issue in this case is likely to be whether any act or omission by a police officer or any delay in the treatment Henry Novak received caused or contributed to death, unquote. Moreover, a Polish doctor working in England has stated himself that, in his view, had the police simply propped Henry up against the wall, held him in place, and called for an ambulance, that he likely would have survived, and that when the police moved Henry onto his side and placed his arms behind his back, that such actions likely stretched the affected vein in his lungs and could have opened up the clot that was forming, which would explain why Henry rapidly lost consciousness following their actions and was more actively pleading with them as they handcuffed him. Now, in the interest of public trust, I would argue here that the rest of the body cam footage should be released, and not just that of the one officer. The cam footage for all officers should be released, alongside the aforementioned cell phone and neighbors' security camera footage. Not that it should matter at all, but the accusations of racial harassment against Henry were proven entirely false in court, and the judge considered this to be an aggravating element in sentencing, stating directly to Vikram, quote, "You wrongly placed blame on Henry. Your lies misled the attending police officers, which influenced their decision not only to arrest and handcuff Henry, but also to give subsequent emergency first aid, in ignorance of the fact that he had a serious chest wound," unquote. The judge also stated that he believed that Vikram had misled his own family members about the nature of the incident, but based on the evidence available to me, I have a difficult time believing that the Digwas acted in an entirely sincere and reasonable manner. If we return to the 999 call made by Gurpreet, he reveals that they restrained Henry. So not only did Vikram take away Henry's phone, thereby preventing him from calling himself an ambulance, the Digwas prevented Henry from even knocking on someone's door to seek aid.
Is that person still there?
Yeah, we're restraining him right now because he's just attacked my brother and took my brother's turban off.
I
And
hear
we're
you.
restraining
Just bear
him,
with
so I'm
me.
not letting him. I can't let him go until this gets
Listen.
sorted. I'm not
Listen.
being racially attacked and letting this
Okay.
get away with it.
Okay, listen.
If I am to entertain their innocence, a gesture that they did not afford Henry, it can be argued that in the dark, Henry's wounds were not immediately apparent. Most of the bleeding was internal, and even when the police officer pulled Henry from behind the car, there was no blood on his exposed lower torso. Henry's slurred speech and physical decline could have been attributed to Vikram's assertion that Henry was drunk. But how exactly could Henry have assaulted Vikram when he was so intoxicated that he couldn't even hold himself up? And again, Vikram's mother took the murder weapon home at her son's request, and Gurpreet lied on the 999 call to the police, stating that he too had been harassed by Henry. The 999 operator also repeatedly asked Gurpreet if any weapons had been involved.
Because the police are on their way. Just keep him restrained.
Go.
Yes.
Has anyone
Yes.
seen any weapons?
No, there's no weapons.
Just to confirm, no one's seen any weapons.
No. I don't know what weapons it would be. I don't know what weapons he would have seen, so...
No, that's fine. I just need to confirm that so we know what we're dealing with. Just so the officers...
Now, the judge argued that Gurpreet didn't know about any weapons or a stabbing, but note that the operator asked Gurpreet again toward the end of the call if any weapons have merely been seen. What the operator is getting at is whether or not any weapons are present, not whether or not they've been used. Gurpreet likely knew his brother carried the larger blade in a rather visible manner. It's been widely reported that Vikram was known by his family and throughout the community to do this. Their own grandmother recently explained in a Daily Mail piece that their family came from a particularly martial Sikh sect that prides itself on being skilled in the use of swords, knives, and other weapons while proclaiming themselves to be the, quote, commandos of the faith. Gurpreet already told the operator that they're Sikhs. He could have just said that they both carry the kirpan, but that this is legal and wasn't involved. He previously told the operator all about how they wear turbans and have long hair, etc., but for some reason thought it proper to deny that any weapons were even present. Moreover, Gurpreet tells the operator, quote, I don't know what weapons he would have seen, unquote.
I don't know what weapons he would have seen, so...
No, that's fine. I just need to confirm that so we know what we're dealing with.
That is a very strange comment. Who is Gurpreet referring to here with he? Henry? If so, this could very well be a Freudian slip of sorts. Think about it. Everyone here, even the neighbors, had heard Henry continually exclaiming that he had been stabbed. Vikram is all the while denying it. Gurpreet's comment to the operator that, quote, I don't know what weapons he would have seen, is probably him revealing inadvertently that he too is denying Henry's claims. Apparently, Gurpreet even saw his mother carry the dagger away, since it was his cell phone footage that captured it. Vikram's mother and father both arrived at the scene at 11:23 p.m., so the father saw this too. The Daily Echo reported at trial that the same cell phone footage showed the father accusing Henry of attacking both Vikram and Gurpreet. His exact words were, quote, "You've just attacked my kids," unquote. So at the very least, this shows again that Gurpreet lied about the situation. But then the father also appears to accuse Henry of pretending to have been stabbed, or perhaps of feigning his injuries. Quote, "He's pretending. A minute ago he was talking to you guys. Now he's trying to get up and going to leave," unquote. But who is the father talking to here? Well, if we return to the 999 call, Gurpreet is often heard speaking to someone in the background, and I think it's concerned neighbors. For example, someone wants to give Henry water at one point.
Leave it, 2 minutes, the police are on their way. I haven't got any water on me, how can I give him water?
Gurpreet is also repeatedly heard telling someone in the background to leave Henry alone, that the police are on their way.
Leave him, don't touch him, because the police are on their way, just keep him restrained. Yes.
The father, I think, is talking to these people, telling them that Henry is pretending and trying to get him to sit up because the whole thing just looks terrible. But ultimately, while Vikram's brother and father were both arrested and investigated, all charges were dropped against them, at least those concerning suspicions of their potential involvement in Henry's murder. They were, however, brought up on additional charges for possession of various illegal weapons, and the hearing for that will be in July. Following Vikram Digwa's sentencing, Henry's father read a statement aloud to the press.
Henry had been stabbed multiple times, and as his chest filled with blood, he tried to escape. He was chased, abused, and filmed by Vikram Digwa and others. When police arrived, Henry was lying on the floor, barely able to sit up and plainly in severe medical distress. With his final words, he told officers that he could not breathe. He told them he had been stabbed. In fact, Henry told officers that he could not breathe 9 times. He told them he had been stabbed 4 times. The response from one officer was, "I don't think you have, mate." The police have said they were misled by the murderer and that the scene when they arrived was complex. Unfortunately, it seems to us the truth is much simpler. The police were told by our son himself and by a member of the public who called 999 that they heard someone shout that they had been stabbed. But the police did not believe them. Henry was pulled across the gravel, his hands forced behind his back, and he was placed in handcuffs. Instead of being treated as a dying victim, police formally arrested Henry for assault and read him his rights. That was the last thing he heard. Henry did not die with dignity. He did not die with the care he deserved. He lost consciousness before anyone believed him. Let me be absolutely clear. We hold Vikram Digwa solely and 100% responsible for the brutal murder of our son. But Henry should not have died on the streets of Southampton in police custody. The way he was treated was inhumane and degrading. His murderer, however, was afforded decency. He was believed.
Mr. Novak then goes on to highlight that, unlike his son Henry, Vikram was not handcuffed when arrested, nor was he handcuffed when he was transported to the police station. In fact, the police even took him to the kitchen so he could choose his food. Then Mr. Novak repeats the words of the prosecution.
As the KC for the prosecution summed up in court, this is not a case about Sikhism, this is not a case about racism, this is a case about murder.
Respectfully, I am obligated to disagree with Mr. Novak, although I suspect these are the words of the state's nudge unit and not his own. Henry's demise and inhumane treatment had everything to do with so-called racism. He was denied dignity simply because he was a white man accused by brown people of being racist.
Sorry, we just got attacked racially by some white person. I can't let him go until this gets sorted. I'm not being racially attacked and letting this get away with.
Certain leaders are now asking that the public respect the wishes of the Novak family and refrain from making Henry's death political. But the fact is, Henry died because of politics. He died because of the politics of white self-loathing and historical guilt. He died because of the politics of mass migration and ethnic replacement. Perhaps most importantly, Henry died because of the politics of the British police force. The National Police Chiefs Council has a clear mandate to enforce so-called anti-racist practices. It literally has a policy called the Police Race Action Plan, wherein it is stated that, quote, "It is not enough for us to not be racist or to claim not to be racist," and that the police are to, quote, "remain vigilant because racism is insidious and will always be a threat to our model of policing by consent." The Digwa family clearly understood the mechanics of this mental illness afflicting British society and its police force, and they attempted to seize upon it for self-interest. In fact, the evidence undermining Vikram's story must have been overwhelming because even the judge himself seemed overly concerned with how Henry's murder had damaged race relations in Britain. He stated to Vikram, quote, "Your actions have stirred up racial tension in Southampton and across the country, which have made many Sikhs worried about their own safety, even though they have done absolutely nothing wrong," unquote. Perhaps each and every Sikh is not guilty of Henry's murder, but when push comes to shove, it does appear that the Sikhs will close ranks.
One, if you're in support of the Sikh. Two, if you're in support of Henry. Obviously, Henry's no longer around, but, you know, it still counts. So, guys, can you just start collecting the votes, please? They got 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2... Okay, fine.
Can you put a 1 in the comments if I should piss on Henry's grave, a 2 if I should shit on his grave? Thank you.
The Digwa family restrained Henry against his will, and they refused to call for an ambulance that he desperately needed and was most likely pleading for. They conspired against him, lied to the police to varying extents, and even hid the murder weapon. In fact, Vikram's grandmother also reportedly stated regarding the actions of his mother that, quote, "She only did what any mother would have done, which is to protect her child, and now she's going to be punished for this," unquote. Think about this statement. Is that in line with so-called British values? And, more importantly, does that reflect a broader attitude in the Sikh community, or is it isolated to the Digwas? To one extent or another, every minority community in Britain seems rather clannishness in its aims, actions, and sense of justice in comparison to the native white British, who remain pathologically individualistic. As Millennial Woes also stated in his article, quote, "The truth is the whole world thinks in racial terms, and we white people should never have stopped doing the same. We might have always been individualistic, but only recently did we become stupid," unquote. The bottom line is that the clannishness of the Digwa family is the same clannishness that has allowed Pakistanis to rape thousands upon thousands of white girls with relative impunity. It's the same clannishness seen within their communities that actively cover up the behavior and deflect attention away. Note the rhetoric of one Sikh on social media in response to a promise made by Rupert Lowe to ban the kirpan. Quote, "I was born and raised here. Countless brave Sikh soldiers died for Britain proudly wearing their turban and kirpan. Thankfully, Rupert and Restore don't get to decide what is British. Beware, today they're coming for me, but tomorrow it could be you," unquote. But why should a Sikh man get to decide what is British over someone like Rupert Lowe? As Martin Sellner recently highlighted in a Telegram post, a real Brit is someone who is supposed to feel bad because of colonialism. Point being, Sikhs and others are often allowed to invoke the empire with a sense of pride, while native Brits are meant to feel guilty about it. When it comes time for someone to pay for the supposed sins of the empire, that privilege doesn't fall to Sikhs or any other ethnic minority in Britain, does it? More importantly, who is actually coming for whom here?
A snapshot of Britain in the 80s. Fast forward to the final days of this summer and the change is undeniable. The non-British born population went up by 47%.
I'm worrying that our society as Brits is being undermined by the people who are coming in.
I'll end with another segment from Millennial Woes essay. If current trajectories proceed and diversity increases in Britain, how much more perilous does the situation become for us white people? What happens when the police are largely non-white and instead of taking 3 minutes to wise up, they take 10 minutes, or simply decide not to? What happens when the Independent Office for Police Conduct is largely non-white, and even when misconduct is clear, they simply decide not to see it? What happens when the government is largely non-white and even though the regulatory bodies are clearly corrupt, it simply decides not to do anything about it? What happens when the political parties are largely non-white so you can't vote for a less third world government? Without remigration, all of these things will happen well within this century.